Hey y'all, I'm Derek and welcome back to the YouTube movie review. So a few months ago I started doing the channel Awesome Movies, and then things got in the way and I just never finished, but that's going to change today. So today I'm going to do two of the channel Awesome Movies. The last two, Suburban Nights and To Boldly Flee. This looks like it's going to take a while because together it looks like it's going to be 6 hours of viewing. Pray for me. Let's get started. That was so bad. So let's start off with Suburban Nights, the better of the two. The story is basically all the producers come to Chicago because the nostalgic critic found a treasure map online that's right in his neighborhood that will lead them to the Gauntlet of Power, and all along the way there is a ancient wizard who's tracking them who absolutely hates technology. Okay, remember that point. So anyways, they all dress up in their finest cosplay and go off in teams to try to find this treasure. And it turns out that the treasure was placed there by a D&D master about 20 years beforehand, and all along the way there are obstacles. One's just a puppet, the others are people who are dressed up in cloaks. Truth be told, there are some funny parts to it, like, okay, Spoonie is dressed up as Gandalf, and there's this one point when they go up against some of the cloaked villains and he just starts throwing birdseed at them. And says, oh, you don't understand, this is how we're doing it today. I guess you usually do it this way, but no, we're doing birdseed today. So now you have to fall down and re-energize at the starting point. Turns out he finds out that that is not what's going on. These people are actually out to kill them. There's a fight scene on a playground. That's actually kind of funny to watch because they get shooed off there because people actually want to use the playground. But then, just like in Kick-Assia, some of the jokes go on too long. Apparently the writers believe that if you extend a joke long enough, it'll be funny, but that's not how it works. If you extend a joke too long, it dies. There's like this one scene where Film Brain and some other kid have to pick up a stone to find out which way they're supposed to go, and they do this like 4 or 5 times. The rule of thumb is 3. 1 by mistake, 1 by accident, 1 on purpose, okay? What I mean is one time they pick it up and it frightens them and they drop it. That's the mistake. Another time somebody picks it up and somebody bumps into him and that's why he drops it. That's by accident. A third time they pick it up, the guy on the other line of the stone is like, hey, if you do this again, I'm not going to come back because I got other things to do today. And then they learn what they need to do and drop it. That's funny. They do it so many times it just gets annoying. So anyways, they go through all these misadventures and finally they find out where the gauntlet is. And the D&D player from 20 years ago hid it in a power glove. If you don't know what the power glove is, it's a remote control system for this Nintendo Entertainment System from the early 90s. And you probably have never heard of it before, and that's because it kind of sucked. It only fit one kind of hand. It was terrible. Malachi, the wizard who hates technology, shows up and he gets hold of it and he starts shooting off magic. And in the middle of the final battle, he picks up a cell phone to order a coffee. And apparently that's supposed to be funny. Okay. That's called destruction of motivation, and it completely ruins the character for a very bad punchline. And I'll explain that, okay? Throughout this entire movie, Malachite had this obsession with destroying technology because he believes that the world would be better treated by magic. and he has gone so far as to kill people for the use of their technology. And then, at the very end, he uses a cell phone to order a latte at Starbucks and says, well, at least I'm not a hypocrite. No! That ruins your complete motivation and just shows that the writers didn't care enough to give you a proper story arc. Whew. Well, anyways, at the very end, it turns out, oh, I forgot to mention this. There's a running gag through the whole thing that Mati from Captain Planet, who was a reoccurring character on Nostalgia Critics episodes at that time, comes in and just wants to help. And it turns out that Mati has the Heartstone on his ring, which is the only thing that can destroy the Gauntlet of Power. But in the end, Malachite dies and so does Mati, so they cremate him, put him in a Quaker Oats box, and send him up into space. The end. All in all, there were some funny bits in there, like when Lindsay Ellis played Galadriel from Lord of the Rings. She would glamour people by speaking Elvish and doing the Macarena. That was funny. And then at the very end, that didn't work on Malachite, so they brought in a stunt double, which was her best friend. That was funny. But most of it was just dragged out, long, overproduced, and not well written. I'll just say it's kind of fun. This is probably the one that I would actually watch again. Now we get to Boldly Flee. In To Boldly Flee, Nostalgia Critic feels really bad that Mati died. It turns out that Spoonie is holding Mati's personality in his brain, a la Star Trek 3, Search for Spock. And that's basically what it is, but there's a twist that Nostalgia Critic is on house arrest for blowing up a planet, which happened on his series when he did Battlefield Earth. But also there's this thing going on in space called the plot hole. It's this massive void that causes weird stuff to happen. And there's little tidbits of all the producers who weren't able to go to Chicago. Like there's a scene where Diamanda Hagen's about to eat a sandwich and the ham in the sandwich gets replaced by Minion's hand and she eats it anyway, which is completely Diamanda Hagen. But anyway, so they decide that they have to go explore this plot hole. So what do? They turn the Nostalgia Critic's house into a ship and launch it into space to go find this plot. And there's conversations throughout the entire thing about how no one can be doing what they do, which is reviewing movies for eternity. It's just chasing the zeitgeist and everybody has to move on. It's actually very bleak. It sounds like the swan song for everybody involved in this movie, which is stupid because there are several people no longer associated with the channel still doing what they were doing at this time. The reason being is because people like it. They like these personalities doing what they do. It's not chasing the zeitgeist, it's creating a following and working towards that following. And, oh, I forgot to mention, early off, Linkara gets replaced by Mecha Linkara, which is a character that was on his show for a while. And that plays a part because there comes a scene that's very, very uncomfortable to watch. Basically, Mecha Linkara traps Nostalgia Chick, played by Lindsay Ellis, in a room and turns her into a cyborg. It's very uncomfortable because it's literally a rape joke. I didn't believe anyone had to be told this in the aughts or the 2010s. Rape's not funny. There's a difference between an implied consensual sex joke and an implied rape joke. I'll explain. So, let's say Linkara and Lindsay Ellis were flirting through the entire thing. They go into a room and they're tripping over baskets that's over the floor and it sounds like they're having sex and somebody overhears it. That's an implied sexual joke that's sort of funny. However, this scene actually starts off with Mecha Linkara closing the door and Lindsay Ellis having a look of fright on her face, and then you get all the humorous sexual sounds. That's not funny. That is a rape joke. And it's very uncomfortable to watch. Moving on past that, they finally get to the plot hole, and Nostalgia Critic enters the plot hole, and he has this entire conversation with Doug Walker, the writer. And this conversation is very sophomoric about the philosophy about which came first, the writer or the character. It's very convoluted, and it's a freshman writing a sophomore paper, if that makes sense. Basically, someone who has no idea what the concept is writing a paper for somebody who's supposed to know a little bit about the concept. And it goes on forever. Well, while that's happening, there's a giant fight going on between the house ship that the producers created and a ship manned by Spoonie, dressed as the guy from Battlefield Earth, I can never remember his name, and Commander Zod, who were both reoccurring characters on Nostalgia Critic's show at the time. So Doug Walker and the Nostalgia Critic are having a debate while this is going on. Nostalgia Critic's like, "You do something, you're the writer." And Doug Walker's like, "Well, you tell me what to do, you're the character." And this ends up with the Nostalgia Critic going into the plot hole to fix the plot hole and basically to killing the character. So the whole thing was to be the swan song for the Nostalgia Critic, because at this point he decided to retire the character of Nostalgia Critic and start his show Demo Reel, which did not go very well with fans because it was a scripted comedy show and it read too much like the old Cartoon Network show Home Movies, which was a great show, but when it's duplicated outside of the cast, it just didn't work. So basically it ends with all the producers going back home, the Nostalgia Critic's up in space. Well, the two aliens are gone, and the last thing that happens is that the plot hole is a giant star in the sky now that says, "I am the Nostalgia Critic." So for this one, it's very much of a downer, and it's 3.5 hours long. And most of it is filler, or jokes that don't work, or jokes that are inappropriate. The writing is very haughty. It's very much, "Oh, you know I'm right because I'm the writer and I'm the source, and you trust the source, don't you?" It's just not fun to watch. It was very finalistic and nihilistic because it was all about basically throwing the channel away. That's how it read. I mean, going back, I know that it was supposed to be the swan song for the Nostalgia Critic, but the writing made it seem like everybody was quitting. Thankfully that didn't happen because some of my favorite shows on YouTube came from Channel Awesome, and I still watch some of them to this day. All in all, I will not watch this again. It was not fun to watch. It was a slog to get through, and it just was not funny. It was just old, played out, inconsistent movie references and a lot of, "We can't chase the zeitgeist forever." I know this one turned out to be a bit angry, but I was angry watching these movies. Well, not so much Suburban Nights. Suburban Nights still had a sense of fun to it. To Boldly Flee did not. It was not fun at all. Okay, so that's my review of the two final Channel Awesome movies, Suburban Nights and To Boldly Flee. If y'all have any YouTube movies that you'd like me to look at, please just drop me a link down below. Especially if y'all have any spooky movies that y'all know of on YouTube, leave me a link because I want to review a few of those for Halloween. So yeah. Thanks for stopping by, thanks for tuning in, and come back later for some more YouTube movie review.